Dolph Lundgren. What better casting is there than someone to play He-Man than Dolph Lundgren? I felt that it was time to revisit him in the role in the movie Masters of the Universe. Does this film hold the power of Grayskull? Let us find out in my review revisit. Let's do it. In 1987, Masters of the Universe was released into cinemas, a film that was based upon the Mattel toy line of He-Man and Masters of the Universe that was so big in the 80s and brought a lot of happiness to a lot of young children, including myself. The film came out in 1987, as I said. It was rated PG with a runtime of 1 hour and 46 minutes. It came as directed by Gary Goddard. This was his only real directing credit of a major motion picture. It was written by David Odell with Stephen Tolkien and Gary Goddard helping out on writing duties, uncredited rewrites. The film starred Dolph Lundgren as Adam, or He-Man. There was no Adam to be in this movie. Frank Langella was cast as Skeletor, fantastically so. Meg Ryan with her amazing eyes as Evil Lynn, spot on casting there. Billy Barty as Gwildor. They couldn't afford to do Orko, so they went with a little goblin type fella instead in Gwildor. Courtney Cox in a very early role as Julie Winston. Robert Duncan McNeil, who you may know as Tom Paris in Star Trek Voyager, and in his own right has become quite an accredited director as well. John Cypher as Duncan, Man-at-Arms. Chelsea Field as Teela. And James Tolkien, who you may remember from Back to the Future, as Detective Lubick. Now, this film here, we start out in Eternia, and Skeletor and his evil forces have taken control of Castle Grayskull. They have overthrown Castle Grayskull and they have imprisoned the sorceress, and Skeletor is taking her powers so that he can become master of the universe. He-Man and Duncan, leading a band of rebels with Teela, are fighting against the forces of evil, and they overthrow some of Skeletor's soldiers, and in the process they rescue Gwildor. And Gwildor takes them to his little hideout where he's invented a key of sorts that opens up doorways in space and time, essentially. And this is how Skeletor has managed to get into Grayskull, because he acquired the other key that Gwildor had made. And it's like a sort of musical round shaped thing with musical sounds from the buttons and a little light show that it gives off. But Gwildor has a prototype of this in his keep still, and Skeletor and his forces want the prototype. Now, He-Man, Man-at-Arms, Gwildor, Teela, they use this device to get into Grayskull to attempt to rescue the sorceress. Only things go awry and they have to make their escape using the machine to get through a doorway that ultimately takes them to Earth. Yes, present day Earth, or 1987 Earth, where for budgetary constraint reasons, it was better to set the movie on Earth. And this is where characters played by Courtney Cox and Robert Duncan McNeil come into the fray. They are a sort of boyfriend and girlfriend duo. She's recently lost her parents and she's about to move away, and they get wrapped up in this adventure with He-Man. He-Man and that come to Earth. They need to get back to Eternia in a matter of time. They haven't got long to do it. They're only here for pretty much a night, and all mayhem breaks loose because Skeletor sends his minions after them to Earth to dispatch of He-Man once and for all. And that's pretty much the story for this film. Obviously, the film is set massively here on Earth, for like I said, for budgetary reasons, and it's kind of bookended by Eternia set stuff. Now, unfortunately for this film, as a fan of the animated series and as a fan of the toys, there's not too much in it that is overly recognisable. Dolph Lundgren himself, he's got the size to play He-Man. He has. He's got the look, and they've done quite a nice costume design for the character. But a lot of the others were toned down. Duncan Man-at-Arms, he lost his green colour, and they've just gone with a kind of military kind of look. But they do keep some of the look of his outfit that he had before, like the round thing on his chest and this sort of thing. Teela, again, she's given a makeover. Skeletor looks fantastic. Frank Langella as Skeletor looks great. He really does. The mask looks really good. It's a highlight of the movie. Meg Foster as Evil Lynn, like I said, that is spot on casting, because she has these amazing eyes anyway, and they're otherworldly in a sense. So she's spot on there. But unfortunately, other characters around them, like I said, there's no Orko, so we had Gwildor. Beastman does make an appearance. Beastman is in it, but he's pretty much the only other recognisable character to fans of the cartoon series, unless you delve into these tiny little characters that, just popped up now and then. So the film itself, it's one of those films that you've got a great nostalgic feel for, but it's not overly great in what it does, but then it's okay for a visit. The acting in it, some of the acting is decent, but then, at this point, Dolph Lundgren was struggling with English and this sort of thing. So, some of his lines are very cringy in the way that they're put across, aren't particularly good. Now, there's not much violence in this film. Mattel turned round to the makers and said, look, we can't have He-Man kill anyone. We don't want He-Man on screen killing anybody, so thusly all the minions that he dispatches of are robotic, essentially. So the film's got a decent pace. For 1 hour and 46 minutes, it doesn't overstay its welcome. And some of the effects are actually pretty good in it. Some are dreadful, some are pretty good. Makeup is what to be expected at the time, but, costumes and that sort of a thing. This very much does feel like a kind of Conan-esque kind of adventure. It falls into that sort of Willow category, Conan, Red Sonja, all that sort of thing, rather than feeling like Masters of the Universe. So yeah, but special effects wise, there's some good stuff with these floating things that Skeletor sat aboard and all that sort of stuff. Now, interestingly, the budget for this film came from Superman 4. Superman 4 Canon Films were making Superman 4 and they slushed the budget to that film in half, hence why it came out the way it did, and that budget was directed to make this movie here. This film. So the soundtrack to this film was composed by the great Bill Conti, who had done Rocky, and it's one of the highlights of the film. It does have a very memorable score to it. It's magical in a sense to capture that kind of Eternia feel, and also very heroic for the theme of He-Man himself. We don't go into the tune of or the music from the cartoon series or anything like that. It's a fun film, but it's not a great film. If anything, if there was ever a movie of a cartoon series that needed a reboot, this is it. He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. It offers such a rich variety of visual characters that there's so much you could do with it, and it would just look fantastic on screen if you had a live action version of the cartoon series. Obviously, this film had budget restraints, and it had and it's a product of its time, 1987. Although, interestingly, the throne room here, the Skeletor's throne room when he's in, it's Castle Grayskull throne room, was actually the largest set that had ever been built in 40 years in Hollywood. They had to knock down a partition between two adjoining studios to build this set. And it does show. But yeah, so this is a film that it's one of those ones that you go into knowing it's a product of its time, the 1980s. It's rather cheap and campy in what it does. It's not particularly good, but you can sit down and you can enjoy it if you leave your mind at the fence, at the door, whatever term you want to use. It was an enjoyable revisit, but after revisiting it, I know that it's not a version or a film that I would probably sit down for another decade or so to watch again. Now, interestingly, the reason why I've watched this film is number one because, as you may know, I pick up the He-Man cartoon figures at the moment. I enjoyed Revolution on Netflix. I thought that was very good. Revelation was okay, but everything that set up gets paid off in Revolution, so it is worth following them through and coming into this Revolution. And Revolution does sort of touch upon this film as well. Gwildor is in it, and there's a kind of sense of this is in continuity, this could have happened, and there's a visual connection as well to He-Man at the end of Revolution to how he is at the end of this movie and what he's wearing and that sort of a thing. So the links are loosely there. Also, there's a nice new set of this movie coming out in Australia. I think it's under the Umbrella line. And I was tempted to get it, but I wanted to dissuade that temptation, and I'd done that by visiting this film, because now that I've watched it, I know that I don't need to pick that copy up. And that's ultimately what it came down to, the reason why I revisited this movie. Anyway, my thoughts on He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. Or just Masters of the Universe. There's no He-Man in the title. What am I saying? Anyway, let me know your thoughts on this film down below. See you on the next one.